Okay, so we're just going to finish off talking about goal orientation, which again, from the last video, I emphasized how important that was to get kids to be, or students, I should say, or learners to be highly motivated. You have to create a mastery motivational climate where they're not feeling like their egos are being judged by others. So there's no sort of self-judgment and comparison with others. So they've got to feel comfortable and confident in their own skin, and they've got to feel comfortable and confident in the classroom you create. If you create an adversarial classroom, a competitive focused classroom with lots of competition and lots of who's better than who, then you will appeal to a very, very small number of kids in that class. So the lesson to learn from this stuff on motivation is to really think hard about what kind of engagement experience do you want. Do you want an adversarial one that threatens egos, or do you want one where kids are going to be task focused, they're going to want to achieve the task, and they're going to want to participate and engage, and they're motivated to do that. So we'll just kind of emphasize, I guess, some of those points. So as I mentioned in the previous video, that this idea of goal orientation really starts to kick in by the time we get towards the end of primary school. We're starting to compare ourselves after the age of 5, and then we really have this ego orientation develop and flourish. And here they're very capable of distinguishing between who's good and who's not in a phys ed or health and phys ed context. And this is where, if their ego orientation overrules their task orientation, then they may be maladapted to learning, and they might end up doing things like avoid learning, avoid trying too hard, or even disrupt the class to get the focus off the fact that they can't achieve the task you've set. So that's important. And so be aware of that and make sure you're ready for that. And then the learning environment will influence whether or not a learner adopts this ego or task orientation. So you have a say. If you create this mastery climate where it's focused on positive reinforcement, on effort improvement, cooperation, and also a kind of no put downs environment, and don't make things directly, don't put up comparisons. You're better than him, she's better than you, he performed better than this person. Public kind of trophies, acknowledgement, reward, lists on walls that kind of compare kids, because that's what gets valued. And even seriously think about, how do you assess? If you're assessing individually, then that's less likely to create a comparison climate. If you're assessing compared to others, so who had the best shot or best beep test score, etc., then that's going to emphasize a kind of performance climate. So I don't think I need to say much more about that. Now, self-confidence and self-efficacy are crucial to kids wanting to maintain a life experience in health and phys ed. So you have some control over these things as the coach or the teacher. So self-efficacy then is this kind of whether you think you've got this ability, your competence, I guess, to perform a particular task. If you don't think you have the competence to perform a task, you're less likely to want to do that. You're less likely to learn, clearly. Whether you were able to perform it before or not, so previous experiences. This idea of seeing someone else perform, so not many people really want to go first. They'd rather see someone else have a crack at it, and if they are successful or can do it, then you might be more willing to have a go. Or you might want to kind of learn through what other people do. Watch, learn, stand back, take it on, and then have a crack. Can give you confidence. So when you see someone else do it, often gives us confidence. The verbal persuasion, being encouraged to do something. How you might think, how you might imagine your performance is going to go. So what kind of movie do you play in your head while you're thinking about this? Whether you're over-aroused, under-aroused, or just at optimal arousal to do it. And then this idea of emotion, what kind of mood are you in, and how do you feel about this particular activity? And then, of course, the instructions that you set are an important influence on all of those different sources of emotion. So you can tap into these and create good learning outcomes, good, strong self-efficacy, or you could destroy these as well. So being a health and PE teacher, you're quite influential in each of these states. So in many ways, how you feel about something impacts how you're ultimately going to perform. If you feel really good about something, you're expecting it to be good, you're going to you're going to a concert, you're really looking forward to it, you love the band, you love the thing, then it probably is going to be a good night. If you go there thinking it's going to be woeful, it's terrible, I don't want to do it, then you're probably going to have a miserable time. So this idea of self-fulfilling prophecy comes through. And the instructor, the expectations you place on an individual will also contribute to whether that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you judge kids by their gender or by how they look or by the fact they might be carrying some body fat or the fact they might maybe look a bit awkward or they've got glasses, if you make these stereotypical judgments and you set a particular standard or an expectation for that child, then it's likely your expectations of them, your limits on them, will become limiting, and so they'll self-fulfill. So please avoid labeling kids before you actually know them. Avoid labeling participants. Avoid saying you look like you're going to be this kind of performer, and therefore my behaviour will reflect that. And if I give you a classic example, regardless of whether you're a male or female HPE teacher, male and female HPE teachers tend to give less constructive sort of critical feedback to females than they do to males. So just on gender alone, we start to set expectations and we start to say, oh, guess what, girls, you're not really up to the standard of the boys, so I'm going to give the boys more complicated feedback than I give you. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Likewise, if I say in a game, I need to make this game even, and I need everyone to have a go, so therefore we're going to create a rule where you have to throw the ball to a girl before you can score. Now, that immediately sets an expectation on all females in the class that they're incapable of participating equally. And when you start to stick that label on, that's the kind of outcomes you get. You start to get inequity. So stereotyping based on gender, height, race, ability, or any of those things is a no-go zone unless you want you want your expectations to lower the bar. So, and I don't think anyone really wants that. So, how do we create positive learnings and motivational climates for learning? Well, allow for individual difference, allow for choice and autonomy, allow them to work at a level they feel comfortable working, and therefore you're not going to threaten their ego. Self-directed practice, discovery learning, open learning, student-centered learning, game sense models, smaller group sizes are really important. Listen to the learners, take an interest to increase this idea of self-determination. Allow them to have a say, not all the time, but definitely allow them to have a say. Student-led kind of approaches. Social interaction is important, providing you don't make it focused on competition. So this is about supporting environments, not competitive or adversarial environments. Give a clear purpose and rationale of what it is we're trying to achieve, and notice it's about learning. So what are we trying to learn, not just we're going to play a sport. And this is about helping them to feel competent and determine their own path. So supporting to do that. So if you let them know what they're in for, then they have more control over that setting, and they know what's coming and they can get ready for it and adjust to it. This is a little bit small, so I'll just zoom this up for a second. Hang on a minute. Still, hang on a minute. Okay, here we go. So here we're trying to think about rewards. If you do too many extrinsic rewards and reward a few people at the expense of the masses, then you're going to end up alienating kids. Focus on intrinsic rewards. How did you feel? Do you feel like you achieved your goals? Get them to set their goals. Get them to evaluate their own goals. And use intrinsic rewards as opposed to extrinsic. Culminating activities. Let the learners demonstrate what they've shown. So I always try and finish an activity with a show me, tell me. Tell me what you learnt, show me what you learnt. Let's see that, but don't do it in a way that's competitive or pits one against the other. It's about what did you achieve as an individual? What do we develop as a result of that class? Always reinforce effort rather than ability, but don't do it in a token way. Don't say nice effort, good stuff, well done, without it actually meaning something. If you say that stuff too many times, it just becomes almost negative and demotivating because people are pretty quick to see through see whether it's real and meaningful, whether it's just you trying to motivate people extrinsically. So don't throw that stuff around too much. My advice isn't don't overdo the well done kind of information. Always kind of help students to appropriately attribute their success or their failure. So help them work out whether it was due to their effort or due to the referee or whatever. And always be aware of the kind of attribution and feedback that you're giving. So if you give typically poor feedback to a particular person or to a particular group, then they'll see that and they'll realize that you don't value their efforts. Always focus on the task, try and get a mastery, climate, motivation going, and then use a hamburger approach. If you're going to give feedback, tell them what they did well, tell them what they could do to improve, and then finish off with a keep going, good effort. So I wouldn't make it too long, but definitely the focus stuff in the middle really helps. So the example here is, that was the right pass to make, well done, but you didn't get down low enough in the pass. Next time, get your head lower over the ball and follow through. Keep working because it looks like you're getting it. Don't wobble on too much in that last one. All right, other things to consider. How are you setting up competition versus cooperation? If we go with a cooperative environment, you're going to have a more positive motivational climate. How are you setting goals? Are these your goals or are these the students' goals? If they're all your goals, then that's extrinsic motivation. People are doing it to please you, not to please themselves. And get them to set appropriate goals and goals that are achievable and doable. And the more diverse the goals, the better. Everyone should have something to achieve. So it's not about can you get 2 3-pointers in a row, or do you have the correct technique. There are many ways to set goals, particularly around leadership and effort and were they able to make good decisions? Did they contribute to the team in terms of tactics or understandings? Did they give feedback appropriately? Were they able to support others, etc.? Try and challenge your learners. Try and get them to be at a level of ability that sort of matches their own. So this is where choice comes in as well. Always trying to match the activities with the learner's ability is a tricky one because you have such diverse learners. So one game for everyone does not work. Multiple games with multiple difficulty levels is something you really want to start to think about. I can't stand it when I go to primary school and I see the one game of softball going on with 30 kids. There's more kids standing around than are doing anything, and there's such diverse range of abilities that it's such an easy thing to modify, but teachers generally don't know how to split games into smaller games to create meaningful environments, and it's very frustrating to watch. Look, some of these are self-evident. I'm not going to talk about all of them. Obviously, being an active teacher is important, so move around, get involved, give everyone equal feedback. Don't just give the boys good quality feedback and ignore the others. Look like you're interested, look like you're enjoying it. Don't look disinterested and disconnected, because that's what the group will become. Assessment is important, but again, because it allows learners to see progress, but what you assess is absolutely important. What we value is what we assess. So assess the things that you want kids to be motivated to achieve. Don't assess the things that are going to cause a sort of a very small percent to actually feel like they're going to achieve. So diversity in assessment is just as important as diversity in goal setting, as I mentioned earlier. Clearly, well-planned, structured, organised environments are important. Variety of activities, variety of instructional methods. Never ever do the same thing always all at the same time. Being engaged is important, but what does that mean? You've got to think carefully about that. It's not just, they look like they're busy. Relevant and meaningful is crucial. I often question some of the choices of sport we make in health and PE. We kind of let's do korfball, but kids just don't see the relevance and meaningfulness of it. Likewise, don't always do the bleedingly obvious soccer, netball, cricket, football, because they've already had lots and lots of experiences of these outside of school, and they've already probably made their mind up about them. So it's not about picking things that are completely irrelevant and meaningless. Likewise, it's not always about picking the things that some kids have already had a fair crack at and already made decisions about. So you want to choose your activities quite carefully and think about how you might take what they've got and build on it in different and exciting contexts. So just to sum up, motivation is crucial to having a good class climate. If you create a mastery motivational climate, one that's not focused on extrinsic rewards, one that allows the individual to work on individual strengths and develop their own abilities, then you're going to enjoy the classroom. If you have one that's adversarial, focused on competition, puts kids' egos at risk, allows for comparison, is one size fits all, then you're going to really struggle and you're going to have lots of kids bring sick notes or disengage or not try. So just really think carefully about how you structure the motivational climate of your classroom. Okay.